In this session, we consider the structures of plants and how we can categorize plants. For most of us, when we are dealing with a large group of items, it's easiest to put it into categories. We do this in our daily lives. Imagine trying to find something in the library that wasn't organized in categories, or even in the grocery store. Can you imagine trying to find things if everything was alphabetical in the grocery store, or organized according to price? Sometimes these categories have to make sense to us, and we have to understand why the categories exist so that we can better understand how to put things into the categories themselves. In this section, what we want to consider are the differences between two different types of plants. The plants on the screen, on the left, the monocot plant is a corn plant. The dicot plant is a geranium. They are both what we call flowering plants or angiosperms. Now, when we look at these plants, they're obviously different. But why? Well, they must be different because they're labeled as two different types of plants, right? And they must be different because one has red flowers and one doesn't, right? Well, let's look more specifically. What's going on with these plants that would help us to determine what's different about them? So, look at these plants. If you had to find a way to put them into their two categories, how might you start? Your first guess might be, well, one has flowers, the geranium, and the other doesn't, the corn. Well, I told you a minute ago that these are both flowering plants. Just because they don't make beautiful flowers that you would sell at a flower shop doesn't mean they don't produce some type of flower. Corn most certainly produces a flower. So we'll have to consider that. What else is different? Well, the leaves are different. They're taller or shorter. We can look at roots as being different. You can see the roots on the geranium, but you can't see the roots on the corn plant. We'll show those to you later. So what makes these able to be put into categories pretty easily? Well, fortunately, the categories have already been established for you. We categorize them based on 5 major characteristics. Monocot and eudicot refers to the embryonic leaf that would be found inside a seed if you cut it open. And you can do this. The next time you have a seed, cut it open. You can see the leaves inside. They're not going to be big green leaves. They're going to be little tiny curled up leaves, but they're still there. Even in dried beans, you can see these leaves inside. We can look at the leaves themselves after they've grown on the plant. In monocots, we have these kind of parallel leaves, but in dicots, we have these branched leaves. If we look at a cross-section of the stem, so if you cut down this plant across its stem, what would it look like on the inside? We focus on things called vascular bundles. In you, your vascular tissue is cardiovascular, so transporting blood around your body, carrying nutrients and waste. The vascular tissue is the same function in plants, it just doesn't have blood. We talk about sap. So we look at water, nutrients, waste, vitamins being carried through the vascular bundles all throughout the plant, reaching from the very longest roots to the very tallest stems and leaves. In our monocots, those vascular bundles are scattered around. In dicots, they form a ring around the outside. In our flowers, we can look at flower parts if they're available to us to look at. Typically, flowers that are monocots are in multiples of 3 or just have 3 parts. The dicots have parts in 4s or 5s. Now, this does mean that if you have a flower with 12 petals, you will have to think about other characteristics to determine if it's a monocot or a dicot. Why did I pick 12? Think about it. We can also look at the roots of the plant. Now, you can't always dig up a plant to look at its roots, so you might have to rely on the other options we've considered. But if you do see roots, you can think about whether or not they're fibrous or hairy, like I like to think of them, versus a taproot. Taproot you can equate to a carrot. So, with those characteristics, we can start to think about what it means to have different structures in different plants and how to use those to our benefit to put them into categories. Why are these categories so important for us? Well, I keep mentioning this word monocot and dicot and these cotyledon structures. All we're looking for with cotyledon is the number of those embryonic leaves that we talked about. So if you're a dicot, you have 2 cotyledons or 2 embryonic leaves. That's all. In our next section, what we will focus on is the types of roots, stems, and leaves that can be present in the different plants. And roots, stems, and leaves in plants, as we will learn, are their organs, equivalent to your stomach and heart and other organs that you have.